Hi everybody, it's been so long since I've gone live. Hope you're well. There's a lot I want to talk about, so welcome. One of the main things I want to talk about is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Something caught my eye today that his wife, Cheryl Hines, I think they've been married for about 10 years. She is the one of the stars of Curb Your Enthusiasm. She played Larry David's wife, now his ex-wife. And she is married to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is, as we all know, comes from a very prominent Democrat family, and whose father, Robert F. Kennedy, was assassinated in, I believe, 1968 in Los Angeles while he was campaigning for president. The tweet from Cheryl Hines, RFK Jr.'s wife, was, "I do not agree with my husband regarding his remarks on Anne Frank and the Holocaust. The Holocaust is a very serious matter. And I think what he said was either reprehensible or despicable or something pretty harsh." Clearly, it's shocking. You see a headline like that, you want to make sure that you read their exact words. You know, it's like, how long are these two going to stay together? But I just thought that I would use that as a jumping off point to talk about how people's views get distorted in the media so that they actually become caricatures of themselves and don't really resemble even what they believe is misrepresented. It's kind of hard to believe unless you have some kind of foreknowledge of the person for you to see. I'll tell you what I know about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I know he's a big environmentalist, obviously. I mean, he's been at the forefront of trying to push for better energy sources, sustainability. Where he has gotten the ire of the whole rest of the Democratic Party and pretty much everybody in media is he has written several books now about vaccines and about the therapies that are now given to children before they're 4 years old. We all have heard that the vaccine schedule has gone way up, but we think, well, how much higher could it go? You know, we trust the authorities. So the schedule has gone way up since you or I were infants. Without belaboring the point and without going on and dragging this out, I want to tell you what RFK Jr. is really all about. And what he's all about is children's immune systems have been under assault from so much stimuli that they're sicker than they have ever been. And take a look at the numbers. So our children and our youth are sicker than they've ever been. There are so many rare conditions. We know autism has exploded, which of course every person, every American with a bachelor's degree knows that the autism connection with the MMR vaccine was debunked, right? It was debunked. Yeah, everybody knows that. And yet I bring up autism. Why do I do that? I just want to sound like some B-rated porn actress who's now worried about her young child, which wouldn't be me. What I really want to say is that this goes so much further than the V debate, the V dilemma. This is much bigger than that. There are many, many whistleblowers who have been canceled. Do you think that canceling just started a couple years ago? No. There are people who, as soon as they started digging deeper behind the accepted facts or narratives or interpretations, and as soon as they started seeing that, hey, maybe we're overstimulating humans as they enter the earth. Maybe we're overstimulating them. And that's the bottom line that I really wanted to say, is that with COVID and before COVID, inflammation and overexertion and overstimulus is a very real thing. What I noticed with not only SARS, the one that we're dealing with being SARS-CoV-2, not only do we talk about inflammation of the respiratory airway and whatever else is causing this sudden acute respiratory distress, that by definition is inflammation. Hi Jennifer, good to see you. I missed you. Any of these acute conditions like acute respiratory distress syndrome, which is essentially the symptom observed with SARS-CoV-2 patients and SARS-CoV-1 patients, that's where you would normally give a ventilator. That by definition refers to inflammation, and we also know it is closely associated with an overactive immune system. We hear this term immunocompromised, immune compromised, and then we hear a term autoimmune. Well, I had no idea what autoimmune really was. Does anyone want to say? I know now. I have an approximation of it. It means that your immune system itself is an enemy. Instead of just protecting you from what you need to be protected from, in an autoimmune disease, your immune system is tired, taxed, has had too much stimuli. Autoimmune means an overactive immune system. And so the second stage of COVID-19 disease involves what they call the cytokine storm. The cytokine storm is what ends up actually killing someone who dies of COVID-19. And you can look this up. Just write it down. Cytokine storm. Cytokine. Storm. So all of the regiments in the immune system mount one final defense to try and get rid of this foreign DNA, basically, this virus. In so doing, in the process, they end up killing the host. You could say that anyone with an autoimmune disease has to be very careful so that there's nothing that would awaken the immune system to all of a sudden be racing toward that outcome. When we talk about inflammation, we're not, we all know what the goal of immunizations are. The goal of immunizations, even before COVID, was to produce an immune response. And that means usually they detect the presence of antibody titers, which not exactly, I think a titer is the concentration of antibodies. When they observe that after immunization, the body produced a robust immune response, that's what tells them that the vaccine works. And what I'm saying is that we all know we have a generalized immune system that is equipped to handle many, many things. We also know that all throughout history, diseases have had mild outcomes and they've had serious outcomes. So what I'm trying to attempt to do is to bring together the two sides that seriously think the other side has gone completely nuts. I'm trying to bring them together and say, well, yes, what you're saying is true. Immunizations work. They produce antibodies. They produce an antibody response. But what about T cells and B cells and the more generalized immune system? What do they do with that? Well, every vaccination that I've ever studied, it raises a specific response, which is fine. Of course, if you've had practice with something, you're probably going to do better the next time around. Is that everything? There are many in this camp of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. who would say there are many other things that can be done. This is not something that absolutely 100% must be done, or this evil Mother Nature, as Fauci calls it, Mother Nature can be very cruel. And this evil Mother Nature is going to just come out and go boo, like through our lives, and we need to have a vaccination for each one of those. I mean, I think everyone's kind of starting to realize that there are many, many ways to skin a cat. Apologies to cat lovers. Look at HIV. The trials for a vaccine, AIDS vaccine, they failed spectacularly in about the year 2000. And it wasn't very well known. Now they're using therapies like interferon and interleukin. There's like so many interleukins now, but we've learned so much more about the immune system just since the year 2000. What I would say is, well, maybe how we can get around this dilemma right now is that we can say, well, I know these people are trained and I know they have degrees. And frankly, I probably didn't even do as good in school as they did, right? So if they're like, really beating this drum, I think why don't we all just say, hey, what do you really believe? Because right now, even people, I would say, in the same families probably just are so nervous about talking to their family member that they avoid it. Now, each member is getting their idea of what the other person believes from the media, kind of reinforcing these generalized ideas of like, Fox News is terrible. And then people who think Fox News is everything's a lie on Fox News, they don't even know that CNN's ratings are the lowest, even lower than some YouTubers. You see what I mean? Instead of all of that, we need to focus on why some people have gone in one direction and why other people have gone in the other direction, whereas they used to agree on a great many things. Now, I have a suspicion that there are many people on this side who actually do not agree with each other on a great many things. And likewise, there are people on this side of the pandemic stance who disagree on a great many things. But we are, as a society, pretty well educated in the United States. And I'd say if you have a master's degree, I think that you should be owed the respect. We should start there. A bachelor's degree, okay, or a master's. And if you went to high school and you want to argue, of course, say whatever you want. But what I'm saying is, if you're going to attack someone, make sure you know who you're dealing with, because actually the people who have second opinions about this pandemic are very credentialed. In fact, maybe the most credentialed in the world. The ones that aren't speaking up, their livelihoods depend on keeping things the way that they are. And you would never think that, right? This is a free society. This is an open society. We have transparency. Well, guess what? We do not have transparency. There are very common truths and trends, such as that children have the poorest health right now. More children have poor health than at any other time, except maybe back at the turn of the century when they had smallpox and they had terrible sanitation and all that. But I'm talking about in the post-sanitation world. Children right now are suffering from all kinds of disorders. Many of them are autoimmune. The chronic fatigue syndrome was once called the female AIDS because it has an autoimmune character. And then, of course, we have retroviruses. So if we approach this from, okay, well, we get an antibody response from this vaccine. Let's really take a look at this in the milieu and the paradigm of a much greater field of factual knowledge. And instead, when you look, like I remember Candace Owens was saying that, you look on the internet right now and you just do a Google search, you're going to be directed to the Gates Foundation or the CDC. And we all know that they say not very much at all. They're always repeating the same thing. Again, if somebody has a master's and they want to go ahead and look at data, their peers should look at the data and they should discuss. In a way, I guess the silver lining is that we can all benefit from tightening up our brain muscles and learning about science. Those of us who were good at it but didn't go into it. Those of us who have always loved math. We need to have more intellectual discussions, and I don't know what that should look like, but it should be in a very spirited and sportsmanlike and respectful way. And I think maybe if we followed certain principles, just guidelines, like for the experiment, that I think a lot of people would come away realizing, oh, my little sis didn't turn into a monster after all. Oh no, she's not dead to me. Sis, you're alive. You know, it's really a nightmare what we're going through. But I tell you, the fragmented media makes it so much worse. I've got another article to write. I'm going to write about how Europe is so fractured. It's like Europe has an autoimmune disease. The UK has canceled all mandates. France just passed a law that they will fine anyone who's not fully vaccinated. Have huge fines. Austria did the same thing. And Germany's like, the Czech Republic just got rid of all of its mandates. But then there's Austria, like I said, and Switzerland's pretty bad too. Hence all of the protests. But it's weird because you think, oh my gosh, they lifted all these mandates. Well, I wonder if it's going to be kind of like a seesaw, because Boris Johnson could get a vote of no confidence at any time. And they have a different system than we do. It's parliamentary. So Boris Johnson, the prime minister, is only serving because his party is the majority party and they have confidence in him. That's it. That's why the UK has elections very quickly. They have to organize very quickly. So if Boris Johnson were to lose and be out, Somebody might come in there, whether it's Labor or Tory, but somebody else could get in there and bring the mandates back as an executive emergency powers. That's what's so difficult and frustrating about this whole situation. So you've got this whole emergency thing, which applies to every level of medicine. You have like emergency approvals, and you have actual approvals. There was an announcement that the Biden administration was abandoning the OSHA rule for private companies with greater than 100 employees. Well, I read at least one article. It made sense to me that they're just abandoning the emergency rule. It says right there in the article they intend to try and make this policy now. So everybody just hold your horses. It does appear schizo, but I'm skeptical. Again, it is an election year. Like, that's pretty knee-jerk to say is election year, but it should still be considered. We shouldn't throw out every single notion that we've ever had in our pre-pandemic lives, other political life, because it's been hackneyed and is now a knee-jerk. We need to really relearn what words mean, where they came from. This is an incredible education in the relearning of scientific inquiry and debate. My Facebook newsfeed right now, I just see like mainstream sites, and I don't have alternative sites on there. My newsfeed is clogged with like only 3 stories. Like, it never changes. One of them is that Neil Young told Spotify that it was either him or Joe Rogan, because Joe Rogan was spreading misinformation that could cost people their lives. Yes, that was in there. I'm really disappointed and shaky, by the way. So they're still going to try and put a permanent rule in with OSHA. That's basically what they said. And of course, if it turns over to a different administration, that might be put on hold. But in our system of government, that takes a little longer. You know, you got to wait 4 years, or at least 2 when you're talking about the legislature, which would be making those laws. Let me just give you another example of emergency laws. For example, everybody who's had the vaccine has had the vaccine that was made for the emergency use authorization. The vaccine is called Pfizer BioNTech, and then it has a bunch, some numbers. Then they made this vaccine called Comirnaty. Of course, they're saying this is one and the same, but as far as the recipe, I think that they've adjusted the recipe just a bit. For example, when they had that whole thing with children and blood clots, myocarditis, there was an article, and it was a legitimate article, that said that some anticoagulants have been added to the new formula. So the emergency use authorization shot is not the same shot as Comirnaty. It hasn't even been released into the United States market yet. That is what is FDA approved. Whether this is a material development or not, I really didn't think this was that important until there was a court case involving those Navy SEALs. And because the judge asked if they could get any of the FDA-approved vaccine to use for these Navy SEALs, and they said, no, we don't have any here in the United States, then he gave them the exemptions. Might be something worth looking into. And we're going to need all our science skills and our math skills. And if there are people who don't want to get into all that, then they need to really cultivate sources who they trust. We need some salons, like the salons in Paris and Moscow and St. Petersburg. And we need to come together, the OG STEM people, right? And really talk about it. I encourage you to read what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has written. You can find his website, childrenshealthdefense.org, childrenshealthdefense.org. You can just read like an open letter he wrote to Sanjay Gupta regarding the flu and the flu vaccine. And you will see that what you thought about him was completely wrong. And that was my public service announcement of the day. So I really hope that in private, Cheryl Hines understands her husband, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., just a little bit better than that. But I did peep her Twitter feed, and it's very non-controversial because she is still a working actress. She's on some kind of a singing show now called I Can See Your Voice, which she's been heavily promoting. So, I mean, I'm sure she just doesn't want to get into it, but it's really sad to me that the nuance that you get by having a face-to-face conversation, such as Cheryl Hines with her husband. We're not getting, unless we're basically forced to listen to the person because they're married to us. Otherwise, we're all avoiding conflict right now, big time. I think I'm just here to normalize debate. I'm here to normalize debate. I would love more interaction, not less, more engagement. Maybe some of you could put in the comments what platform you prefer. I'm on Rumble now, and I'm planning to put a lot more energy into it, and I'm also going to put a lot more energy into Substack, which is growing. I'm on YouTube also, Back to Facts channel, and Instagram, actually. There's like 705 people on Instagram who aren't on Facebook. But if you want to help with this idea of having a dialogue, even maybe we would have a virtual salon. People could sign up and just say, okay, I'll give it a try. I'll do a discussion with the other side on this topic. And if I don't think that I learned anything from the discussion with somebody on the other side, then I'm not going to do it again. At least I want to present a thought form for it so that it can be brought into the concrete reality. I hope you've learned something today, and I encourage you to search more about the topics that I did mention. Hang in there, everybody. I know times is tough. Okay. See you soon. Bye.